Hey everybody, good morning. Welcome to our next video about how to resolve combat. So in this video, we're going to talk about four basic subjects very quickly. We're going to talk about how to measure range. It's easy. You use a ruler. It's measured in inches. You generally measure from center point to center point on the counters, and you measure the range that way. Very quick, very simple. Also, that's going to include determining which firing arcs you're using, both which weapons you're allowed to fire at somebody and what shields you're hitting on the target. And then finally, we're going to talk about how to read a weapon data block and how to arm weapons. So without further ado, let's get into it. Next, we're going to talk about Chapter E1, range. First, how do we measure range to the target? Easy, with the ruler. And you measure from the center point of the firing vessel to the center point of the target vessel or unit. Range is measured in inches, and we just use the ruler. And basically, you're just going to line up the zero spot. You're going to line up that zero spot on the center point of the firing ship, and then just make sure the edge passes through the center of the target ship, just like this. And you just read off the range. So in this case, the range is 6. So it is between 6 and 7. So anything up to 6.99 inches is range 6. So as we go along, from 0 to 1 would be 0. From the 1 line up to the edge of the 2 would be a range of 1, and so on and so forth. So this is a range of 6, and then from there we would look on the weapons chart and figure out what weapon range bracket we're on. Now, there can be some ambiguous situations if the lines are directly on the center point. You know, that if that 7 were to match up directly with the center point right there, then the range would be 7. And but that's about as ambiguous as it can get. Now we're going to talk about Chapter E2, firing arcs, and just talk about how firing arcs work in the game. Again, fairly simple. Each firing arc is a 45-degree arc, and as you can see, we have our cruiser here in the middle, and these blue lines represent the different arc lines. Now, each arc has a specific name. The front port arc is the front left arc. The front starboard arc is the front right arc. Then we have the starboard forward arc. So that would be this arc right here. We have the starboard aft arc, which is this 45-degree section right here. The aft starboard arc, the aft port arc, and then as we come around, the port aft arc and port forward arc. That's what we call them. They don't things are graphical, so you don't really necessarily need to know the names of the arcs. So in this particular case, we would measure, just like we did with range, we measure from the center point of the firing ship to the center point of the target ship, and then we see which of the arcs that line intersects. So in the case of our heavy cruiser here, firing at target A, it could fire out of the front starboard arc. And then we would look on the ship form to see which weapons would be able to hit target A or B or C as we go through. But we're going to talk about shield impacts now. So in the case of the Volare ship here, ship A firing at the Union ship, if we draw that straight line, it's clearly inside the front arc, and so that means the front shield will be hit when the Volare shoots at our heavy cruiser. When cruiser B shoots at our heavy cruiser, it will hit on the starboard side because that passes in between the border, the two white borders here, showing the starboard side of the ship. And then, of course, we have cruiser C firing, and it hits in one of the aft arcs, and therefore the aft shield would be the one that is damaged by an attack. Okay, so just to recap, the firing arcs on the weapon basically are all in 45-degree arcs, and then the arc icons on the ship forms, such as these right here, the solid red areas indicate which the areas through which that weapon can fire. In the case of the antimatter torpedoes, they fire in the forward arc. So any target that's outside that forward arc cannot be attacked with the antimatter torpedoes. Then we've got the LNC 500 phasers. As you can see, you've got a left firing arc, a front half firing arc, and a right firing arc. Basically, these firing arcs all exclude the aft area of the ship. And then it's got the DGR-12 phasers. That solid red box, that indicates 360 degrees. It can fire at any target anywhere as long as it's in range. And then we have the second phaser, which is an aft firing phaser, aft half firing phaser essentially. So basically anybody behind the ship can be fired at by this DG-12 phaser, DGR-12 phaser. All right, that about does it for firing arcs. This is chapter E3, weapon systems, and basically we're just going to talk about the weapon data block. Now the weapon data block, basically up here at the top, each weapon data block is basically got its own outline, so all the information in that block pertains to that particular weapon. Up here at the top is the name of the weapon, and then of course we have right here the firing arcs for each of the weapons. We discussed range and how to measure range already. And next we have basically these green circles represent the weapon's arming circles, and that'll be a function of resource allocation and determining how many weapon arming points you get for that weapon. Obviously, the more power you put into it, the more arming circles you're going to be able to arm, and you'll be able to fire more weapons. And then these black boxes right here represent damage points for the weapon. So anytime that weapon takes a damage, it basically loses one of its dice. And then if both are damaged, then it cannot fire any longer. Next down here, we have the specials. Only weapons that use red dice will have a special line. And basically that simply tells you what damage the weapon causes whenever an S result is rolled on a red die. Only red dice have the S result, and in this case, a special hit or a S hit causes a heavy hit, which is a standard 4 points of damage with 1 leak, and in addition to that, it also causes 2 structure damage as long as it penetrated the shield. And that these specific specials and traits are described in section F of the rule book. Next, in the line right below, we have the traits that are specific to this weapon. Again, all of those traits are described in section F. For instance, in this particular case, the antimatter torpedo has the no bat trait, which stands for no battery, meaning this weapon cannot be armed by using its batteries. And that's usually a function of any weapon that takes 2 rounds to arm. That's a pretty standard feature of a weapon that takes 2 rounds to arm. And of course, the diamonds right here indicate that this weapon takes 2 rounds to arm. And then we go down here to the LNC 500 phaser. You can see they're laid out a little differently. Got the arming circles on top, then the damage boxes, and the firing arc icons right below them. And then of course we have the range and dice damage chart, and the traits are listed down here. In this case, the LNC phaser has the precise 1 trait and point defense mode trait, which means it can fire at homing weapons. And again, homing weapons are going to be in a future expansion. We are doing a lot of work on those right now. So that's about it. That covers the different weapon data blocks. The next thing we're going to talk about is weapon arming, and we'll get into the specifics of that. Okay, we're going to talk about section E4, weapon arming, where basically you apply the arming points that you gained by powering up the weapon system, and then you apply those arming points to specific weapon mounts. So over here, during resource allocation, you might apply power to your torpedoes, and then apply 2 points of power here towards the LNC 500 phaser. And so the Mark V torpedo would have 2 arming points, and then the LNC 500 phaser would get 6 arming points, and then you allocate them to specific weapon mounts. In this particular case, we're arming all the weapons, so we're arming every single one. So for the Mark V torpedo, we get 2 arming points, which means we come over here and we arm that first arming point for each of the mounts. As you can see, there are 2 weapon mounts here, A and B, and basically having a firing arc icon right here, plus the fact that you've got arming points and hit points for that weapon, that signifies a weapon mount. So in this case, it's mount A and mount B. In other cases, the weapon mounts don't necessarily need to be very carefully delineated, but in this case, you've got a left weapon mount, and that filled in, the solid red area shows the firing arcs that it can fire through. So you've got a left phaser, you've got a forward phaser that fires in the front half of the ship, and then you've got a right side phaser that fires, the right side except the aft portion of the ship. Next, we've got the LNC 500 phaser, and we put in 2 points of power to this weapon, which means we get 6 arming points, and so we can come in here and fill in all 6 arming points for the ship. And then we go down here to the DGR-12 phaser, and these items in a solid block are free points of power, basically, or that you get free arming points essentially for these weapon systems, even if you don't apply any power to it. So in this case, the DGR-12 gets 2 arming points for free, and so you would come down here and you can fill in the 2 arming circles right there. So now our phasers are fully armed, and our Mark V antimatter torpedo needs 1 more turn to arm. Now, there is one distinct difference. You'll notice there's a little diamond right here. Weapons are armed from left to right, and so when you get to one of those diamonds, you have to stop arming for that round, and you have to wait until the next round to finish arming the weapon. So next round, let's say we had time, we're approaching the enemy, we got 1 more round, we put in our 2 points of power to the Mark V torpedo, and voila, we have now a fully armed ship. It took us 2 rounds to do it, and our phasers are fully armed, and we're all set to go. Okay, I hope that video was informative. Hope it cleared up any questions you might have. If you have the rules, they will go into more detail about ambiguous situations and stuff like that. But basically, just use a ruler. You measure in inches from center point to center point from the target. You determine which firing arcs you can use. That determines what shield you hit on your target and what weapons you can use against your target. And then, of course, during resource allocation, you apply power, you generate arming points, and then you apply those arming points to specific weapon mounts that you plan to fire. In the next one of the next videos, we'll be talking about how to actually apply the damage to the target and using the cards to do that. So, good hunting. Hope you enjoyed the video, and stay tuned for more videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Okay, that does it for this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and check out our other videos.